taxes down.
All of our drains down to my house and eventually goes down. I have
It hurt me to spend money. I'm behind it. All sides. All sides. Just like that.
Yeah, that was one of the fire hydrant on the corner, and two houses across the street. We already had.
Yeah.
It's full set.
Yeah, a lot of potential.
The town master, I'd like to bring this board of supervisors meeting to session. We have a joint meeting tonight with the school board and Chairman James will bring this meeting to session.
Call to order the Campbell County School Board to order for a joint meeting with the Campbell County Board of Supervisors.
Thanks, sir. As we get into tonight, Frank's already gone to board of supervisors with this preliminary budget, so Rogers, I hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and school board. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening. Want to particularly congratulate Mr. Jones, Mrs. Vaughn, and Mrs. Tanner on your recent election to the school board. So what we have done over the past couple of years when we've gotten together is taken an opportunity to just look at where the county's revenues seem to be projecting for the upcoming budget year. Hopefully that's an opportunity for both boards to have a familiarity with the resources that are going to be discussed. Hopefully the community is also paying attention, and this is another opportunity for them to see and learn where the county stands in terms of our revenues. So this is the exact same presentation that the Board of Supervisors received in December with regard to county revenues. The numbers haven't been updated. I did update the cover slide so that I get credit for two presentations instead of one. But I want to reassure board members that this is substantively the same presentation. So I'll go through this a little quicker this evening. As soon as I get the slides to advance. Just a review of our schedule. Of course, we're here tonight in the joint meeting. Later in January, we'll do an internal process with departments to review their submissions. February 6th is the next formal action for the board where they'll take up the county's capital plan. Those are items of $10,000 or more one-time expenses. That's a 5-year plan that we allocate resources to in every budget. The big date's the 20th when the board will actually get their budget books in hand to include my recommended budget and strategies to get to balance. We'll work session that on the 27th. If we need more time, we'll get back together on the 29th. We'll run advertisements then on March 10th and 17th, hold our public hearing on March 26th to adopt on April 2nd. It's a very constrained process. We have to get the budget adopted that early in April because we have to turn over the tax rates to the Commissioner of Revenue and Treasurer so that they can get tax tickets out. And once we went to twice a year tax collections, we moved that timeline up. So that's why that April is a tough deadline. I know in speaking to the schools in particular, you guys are always anxiously awaiting action from the state, right? And beholden to that process, but we have our own that we sort of keep trucking through and working with the best information we have. Dr. Stanley and I will stay in communication about how best to do that. So that's our timeline. The board has also already conducted the budget public forum. That was at their first meeting in January. We have to do a public hearing about a week before adoption. That's a state code requirement. But quite frankly, by the time we get to that point in the process, the thing's essentially baked. You don't have a lot of time to rearrange priorities, reallocate dollars. So we try to get some input from the community very early in the process so that board members and staff are moving forward with an idea of what priorities we might need to put into a proposed budget. All right, these are just reminders for everybody. The board has been committed to tax reductions. We've been doing that every year since fiscal year 2020. We've touched most, if not all, of our tax rates, the personal property tax rate, the B-poll rate, machinery and tools. We've added some exemptions as allowable under state code for logging, increased thresholds for elderly and disabled tax relief, circled back to personal property. More recently in 23, we implemented a strategy where the board assessed 80% of the, or taxed 80% of the assessed value of the vehicle because used vehicle values are just going on a trend we've never seen before, right? They used to always depreciate, but with COVID and some of the market changes, the values were going up. So in an effort to bring that back into a more realistic trajectory, the board adjusted the rate, but then also only assessed a portion of that. And so again, in 24, we did the same thing. 24 was when we saw the really big reassessment, 33% countywide, and the board did walk the real estate rate back by 7 cents and then reduce some other rates, trying to be sensitive to the tax burden in the community. So I like to point out to everybody that that's real money, and so we look back at what each of those categories were valued at over time, see if we'd have had those pennies on those rates, what might we have received. And so you can see that cumulatively, that's over $10.5 million in taxes that have stayed in the pockets of county taxpayers, individuals, and businesses. So I think that's an impressive number. But you also want to remember both sides of the story, right? Part of why we're able to do that is a meals tax came into play. That was levied in the county. Our last reassessment was up about 6%. And then again, the 33% increase in real estate. And so we've had some natural revenue growth, if you will, in addition to meals tax that have helped us continue to function and operate even with those tax reductions. This is just a little information for everybody, our current tax rates. So we're down to 45 cents per hundred on real estate. That's the one most people really focus on and are most familiar with. Personal property looks like 410 when you look at it, but because we only do 50% of the value of your car, it's really 205 is what we call the effective rate. And then you've got the others for certain classifications of equipment and vehicles, and then our B-poll rates. It doesn't matter in a vacuum, so we like to look at how we're holding up with those around us. I caution everybody, these are tricky charts, right? Because with the exception of real estate, there's always sort of like English, right? There's always an exception, I before E except after C. So we value personal property differently than other localities do. We may do it 100% clean trade, they may do it 50% clean retail. So you really got to dig in on the methodology, but you can see that our tax rates across the board are very competitive in the region, and I think we're all very proud of that. All right, so let's get into some revenue projections. General fund revenues come from three places: local revenues, state revenues, federal revenues. At this point in our process, we set state and federal revenues aside. The state money that comes in is basically money for constitutional officers, commissioner of revenue, treasurer, sheriff, Commonwealth attorney, those sorts of offices. And so that's usually about $14 million a year. And then federal money comes in around $4 million a year, and that's for federal programs, mostly through social services. It's federal matching money that comes in through some of those services. So the board really has control over local revenues and really only some of those. So we like to emphasize that early in our process, and that's what we'll talk about tonight. Remind anybody that's an accountant in the room and would know this better than I have no idea how to go back. It's just advancing. So we do fund-based accounting. So we get money from the state, federal, and local sources. It goes into the general fund, which is one bucket, and then it gets transferred out into other funds: the capital improvement fund, the health insurance fund, the debt service fund. And so you've got those other buckets that the money comes in and goes out to, and that's how we operate. Our first category is general property. Again, that's the one that most folks are most familiar with. This is your personal property, your real property. This is the cornerstone of local government revenues. It's the things that are there. They're tangible things, they exist, they've got a value. They're assessed a value based on Kelley Blue Book or every 4-year reassessment of county properties. And so you can see that that makes up almost $50 million of our budget. Because this is not a reassessment year, that's essentially going to taper the growth in this category. And so we're looking at just around $400,000 in revenue increase in terms of real estate and personal property. You could pretty much divide that between the two. I like to put these into graphs to show a little bit what that looks like. You can see over time, the red is our actual number, the orange is our budgeted number, and we're typically very close as we go forward. The 23 pops significantly, and you would look at that graph and say, what is that? That's when we implemented twice a year tax collection. So you got an extra payment in that year, and so it's going to go up another 10, 15 million, and that's what that is. But you can see then we expect it to kind of just move on a trajectory that's predictable. That's kind of what happens with Campbell County's revenues. They're just steady up and to the right. A few percentage year over year, we hope, and they're steady on. Other local taxes is the next category. The big one here is sales and use tax, but also talk a little bit about meals tax. This has been a really interesting revenue stream for us. B-poll makes up a good bit of this one as well. So your other local taxes, $16.5 million going all the way up to $18.9 million. That's a $2.5 million increase. That should pop off the page to folks who've been watching our revenue trends. Some of that is in the meals tax. That's been going up every year, but the most of that is sales tax. And I'll show you. Why don't I just do it? So here's what that looks like, and you can see beginning in FY20, the separation between the orange budget and the red actual starts to grow a little bit. That's all sales tax. And so let's take I thought this was interesting. You really got to dig in on the sales tax. I got here in FY15, and sales tax was predictably about a $5 million revenue stream. You know, it was tickling up year over year, but it was about $5 million. And then you can see FY21, it starts to really step up. And so we're thinking, is this a COVID thing? You know, what is going on with sales tax here? So we didn't budget to that. It was an anomaly at the time. There were some changes in internet sales tax, you know, point of origin, tax collections, those played in there. So we've been watching that. So we said, okay, let's sit on it. FY22, it's up again. FY23, it's up again. So this year we're baking in a little more aggressive projection on sales tax with a higher degree of confidence, right? Because we're seeing a trend over multiple years. So we're taking that from $7.5 million to $9 million. So sales tax is really driving the revenue projections included in the budget. Charges for services, just like you would think, it's everything from your library charges for copies. The big one here is EMS billing. Some folks may know that the county bills your insurance if you call EMS for an ambulance ride. The county also balance bills you, right? So if you need an ambulance to transport you and your insurance pays some percentage of that bill, the county bills you for the balance. There's balance billing. We also have a $100 non-transport fee. So if you call us and our apparatus rolls to you, there's a $100 fee if you decline transport once they get there, right? So that's the big revenue line here. It's just under $3 million. And of the 3.4 million. So you can see a nominal increase here, 77,500. The EMS billings make up a little more than $2 million a year. Total public safety expenses are more than $6 million, to put it into context. So it helps relieve the general fund of a portion of the cost of providing that service. Here's what it looks like graphically. Again, the EMS billings are driving some of that difference. Fines and forfeitures, hopefully nobody's familiar with that, because that's what you pay at court when you have to go to court, and I know nobody here would end up in court and have to pay fines. So this is a relatively small revenue category in our budget, and then revenue from use of money is an even more interesting one. So fines and forfeitures and use of money, around $650,000 increase, but you'll see, you know, we're taking one down significantly and one up. Let's take a look at that. Fines and forfeitures just kind of bounce along. Nothing too interesting there. Revenue from use of money. This is interest earnings on the county's 40-some odd million we have in the bank.
Wow, yeah.
So in FY23, you can see we budgeted $150,000 in interest earning. We brought in $2,065,000. And I could not get my mind around this. I'm a simple person. This is part of why I think graphs are helpful to tell a story. That's straight interest. You can go back to the statements where the county was making 0.06 on that money, and now it's making 5-6%. And so 5% of $43 million, yeah, you're going to bring in a couple $1 million. It's a great story to tell. Yay, we got it. But the challenge for the board is, how much do you bank on interest earnings going forward, right? So it's probably best treated as a one-time revenue and a year-end windfall if you're lucky enough to get it, and don't miss it, don't program it. So that's a big bit of that one. Miscellaneous revenues to catch all for everything else. I don't think there's anything too tremendously noteworthy in there. Taking the money down a little bit in that category. This is where we sell county property, surplus things. We pay for a water line down Leesville Road, depending on how many people connect. So there's a little bit of variability in that number. Here's what that looks like. Again, FY20 really flew off the chart. What happened there? FY20, we did a boundary adjustment with Alta Vista. They incorporated Deering Ford Commerce Park. We also used to have a revenue sharing agreement with the town of Alta Vista where we got a portion of their meals tax revenue every year. We did away with that, and they paid the county $1 million. And basically 20 years worth of the meals tax agreement. You could call it the market value of the property. You could look at it a couple of different ways. That was a miscellaneous revenue, and that's why that one spiked so much that year. Permits, fees, and licenses, this is basically our building permits. This is where we see revenue based on the activity of our building inspectors, our E&S inspectors, and what's going on in our community development department. Basically flat. We've got a lot of projects in the queue, but we're not seeing a huge spike up or anything of huge value in terms of permit pricing coming in. Here's what that looks like in 2015. Paul has to remind me every year what happened in 2015. I think it was a medical school, the View, apartment complexes, those sorts of things. So you get a little separation year over year in terms of what may come in there. And then we have this last category. Schools may be a little familiar with this. All recovered costs. This is just that. It's money that we recoup for actual costs. It's where the schools pay for SROs. So this is a money in, money out, right? So, and then there's something called ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children, and we have an investigator that is grant funded through that, so we get grant money for that. So we'll see revenue come in for each of those, but they're going to equal the expenses that went out. So it's money in, money out. It's too early for us to project that, so just think of it as flat. We will make that actually whatever it is. The revenue will equal the expense. So when you drill all that down, the county is looking at just over $3.6 million in revenue growth as we sit here this evening. Always reserve the right to amend that. We're early in our process. We're still catching month over month actuals. Things like sales tax and meals tax lag in terms of when they get reported to the county. So these are our best projections as of today, but subject to change over the next several weeks and months as we go forward. We take off the top any projected growth in meals tax, right? And I want to be real clear with everybody that we're on message with this. The meals tax, every penny of it goes into the debt service fund, right? So when we budget $2 million for meals tax and bring in 2.2, the extra 2 goes into the debt service. So did the original 2. When we increase that projection 600,000, the 600,000 goes into the debt service fund. And that fund is paying for Rushburg Middle, Brookville High School, public safety radio system replacement. So not in full, the general fund is still making about a $3 million contribution year over year into the debt service fund too. But if constituents ask, you know, what happened with the meals tax money, there's a very clear line to significant capital projects and major debt that we've incurred that those dollars are directed to. So I just think that hopefully it's reassuring to folks. But that means that it's not available for other things like school operations or county operations. We take that off the top. And then the capital improvement plan that the board initially reviewed is looking at a $500,000 increase in support it will need from the general fund to keep it. So we suggested that might come off the top, which gets you down to about $2.5 million in increase in the coming year in terms of revenue for everybody's budgetary needs. And here's sort of a sum of what that looked like, right? Most of it is sales tax. We did budget an increase in interest. Not $150,000, but we're not budgeting $2 million either. So we took that up a little bit. The meals tax, we're taking up just over $630,000. The B-poll tax, $425,000. Real estate and personal property, remember I said general property taxes are just going up a few hundred. There it is there. So that means all the other local revenues net out to just over $77,000 in revenue growth. And from my perspective, I think it's a strong statement that Campbell continues to see that revenue growth. But these are the ones that I consider to be most economically sensitive, right? Once your home or business is assessed, it's assessed for 4 years. Are the sales tax going to stay on trend? Are the meals out habits going to stay on trend? Those are the sorts of things the board has to weigh in terms of getting to a level of confidence in the budget projections, right? So that is everything I have. Just wanted to tell that story for folks to all have the same context as we go into the conversation going forward about budget needs and what's available. I will be happy to attempt to answer any questions anybody may have.
Frank, do you think the sales tax increase is because people are buying more or things are costing more?
I think both. I think it's buying more, costing more, and I think it's internet point of sales, sales tax coming back.
So, 2 points. So, traditionally, we've usually been around 2 or 3% increase, but you're saying we basically had a 5% increase this year.
That we are gassing the sales tax number. We've been supremely conservative on it, and it's right there, right, Dr. Miller?
Yeah, that's nice. The other thing, how much is the, I know this is out of local, but into state, how much has the change in the grocery tax impacted our county?
I couldn't answer that specifically. I have to do a little digging to see what it actually looks like.
Because that goes into our general fund, right?
The sales, yeah. Sales and meals, the prepared
No, the
meals,
they changed the grocery tax.
portion of the sales, yeah.
Okay,
We're still trending up, it's just whether we would have been higher.
all right. Yeah, okay. Well, that's real healthy. That's good. It's real healthy.
That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
I hope there's more questions. Anybody?
Can we get this into us?
I'd be happy to send it to you. Thank you for that, Mr. Maddox. It's also available on the web.
Okay.
And as we go through, we will send it to you anyway, but for anybody who's streaming at home, I know this is must-watch streaming, right? Presentation on county revenues for FY25, and there's a tornado.
Selling ads.
But, yeah, we'll send it, but for everybody who's out there, it is available on the county webpage, all the attachments that the board get throughout the process. So folks that can't come to meetings can look at the spreadsheets, look at the PowerPoint, and we love budget questions, so they can always call in.
Thank you.
It's also evidence I can't give a short answer. Yes, we will email it to you.
Any more questions? Yes, sir. We'll move on to school overview. Dr. Stanley?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Because we are so heavily reliant on the state and the state budget, I don't have a budget presentation to make tonight. Hopefully that budget becomes a little clearer as, you know, the state works through that process. We've got the governor's initial proposal, and right now we've had it for, I guess, a week and a half, so we're still working through that. But I can tell you that in that proposal, he's recommended a 1% bonus for next year for all employees, and then the following year a 2% pay increase. So as that shapes up, obviously that'll drive our decision making and shape our priorities. So I don't have a presentation on that tonight, but I can talk to you really about where our schools are right now and some of the major issues that concern us, I guess, as a school board and administration. Our schools are in a great place. At the end of the school year last year, all schools were accredited based on their SOL scores and other criteria that shapes that accreditation. In terms of reading, math, history, all of our scores were at or above the state average and trending in the right direction. Science is an area that we continue to work on and have some issues with. And I think that's because during the pandemic, we really focused on math and reading, you know, as the priority during that time period. So our grad rates are fantastic. I mean, right now we've got a 94% graduation rate, which again is above state average. We have reached our capacity over here at the Technical Center. We've got 3 sessions of approximately 100 kids that are coming over here and taking courses to get certified in workforce, you know, credentials. And then with CVCC, we've got over 115 kids who are going over there every day as part of the dual enrollment program, and again working on workforce credentials. So that is by far leading the region in terms of participation. So we feel really good about where we are. When we started the school year, we sit down with our administrators and kind of shape up what our priorities are. And this year we had 4 priorities. The first was safety. I mean, obviously we always want to make sure we're putting safety of our students as our first and utmost priority. Then we put our instruction, okay, because we are still seeing, even though our SOL scores are good and we're meeting accreditation, they're not where they were pre-pandemic, so we still have work to do. Make sure that we're teaching the right material, make sure that our teachers that we're onboarding understand what it takes to you know, get kids to the levels they need to be. We really wanted to focus on culture and make sure that our students are, you know, back in the classroom, getting, I guess, readjusting to life the way it was prior to COVID. So we feel good about creating a student-centered culture in each of our buildings. And then we really wanted to focus on transparency with our parents and welcoming them back in our buildings and making sure they understand that the buildings that we have there, they are welcome, and the parental rights are important to us too. So that was kind of our priority going into the school year with our administrators. and I think they're doing a great job this year. One of the biggest struggles that we had last year was with absenteeism, chronic absenteeism, not only our division, but statewide. I mean, I think you see it in most schools, and you also see it in most businesses and everywhere you go. That has changed since pre-COVID times. So that's something we want to continue to work on. And we had a presentation at our school board meeting the other night where our truancy officers and Director of Student Support showed us that we're trending in the right direction. It's getting better, so there is hope. In terms of, I guess, major priorities that will shape our budget priorities, the first is going to be student safety. Okay, that will stay there. We recently got a school safety grant that is going to allow us to beef up some of our entrances in some of our schools, allow us to update our technology and badge readers as people come into the building. We need to make sure that we got processes and things in place that ensure safety. And we're also going to put some ballistic film on some of our doors and some of our areas that we feel like would be targets that might need that. So we're going to continue to do that. One of the things that I know Mr. Rogers mentioned were their SROs, and I think everybody in this room needs to reflect on how important that is. I mean, when parents drop their kids off and they see an SRO standing in front of that school, that means something. And we are leaders in the state, okay? Leaders around this region, and everybody is trying to be like Campbell County and have SROs in the building. Until you've been a principal and gone through a crisis, you may not realize how important that person is, but once you've been through a couple of them, you realize, hey, this person's here for a reason. And we really, when we are entrusted with the lives of so many kids, we can't take that for granted. It's important. So school safety, and then when personnel. I mean, obviously personnel is always an issue. Teachers harder and harder to find. A teacher shortage is real. We're fortunate here in Campbell County to be near some major universities and colleges, and we've been able to staff our positions, but it's getting to be more of a challenge. I think this was the first year that we didn't start the school year with every position filled with a full-time teacher. We had to start with some substitutes and some interim teachers. So it's getting harder, and really the challenges in the classroom are getting to be more difficult. We are seeing an increase in student behaviors, especially at the elementary level. Students aren't coming to school like they were so many years ago, ready to learn. Okay, being ready, being. When I say that, I mean being able to sit still in the classroom and take direction. And teachers are seeing more outbursts. They're seeing more hitting. They're seeing more behaviors that we haven't seen before. And we've also seen a significant increase in vaping. So that's something that we're really looking at, and not only vaping, but vaping with THC. So drugs in our community are an issue. And I mentioned that at the school board meeting last night. We're taking steps to fight that and to battle that, but it's an issue. It makes it harder on teachers. Okay, so when I say personnel, obviously I'm talking about compensation for our teachers. We got to make sure that we're continuing to have a competitive salary to attract the best teachers and to retain the best teachers. And every locality around us has the same goal. I mean, obviously Bedford wants to do the same thing. Amherst, Lynchburg, Appomattox, we all have the same goal. And our salaries for our teachers are competitive. Say out of those regions, we're right there. If you rank us, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, if you rank us in how we pay our teachers, we're right there, number 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, that's kind of how we rank. So anytime we can put money into our pay scale and improve that, the better off we'll be. Again, I don't know if a 1% bonus next year is what the General Assembly will adopt at the end of the day. Hopefully it'll be more of a raise. I hope so. If not, then we'll be looking to do that out of our local budget to the best of our ability, and then may come back and ask, this is what we're looking at, and see what our supervisors think. But the same thing applies to our classified employees. It's very hard to compete with all the other local businesses and other school divisions. It's important that we're paying minimum wage, and we're doing that. And for the past few years, we've worked hard to make sure that we're meeting minimum wage, but we've not been able to, we haven't had the funds to really address the whole classified pay scale. So our pay scale is getting compressed a little bit. So how can we address that? Because we know that our bookkeepers, that our bus drivers, that our custodians, that our aides, they're the ones that make the schools work. And we've got to be able to keep good people if we want to have good schools. So again, safety and security, personnel and salaries. And then the last thing is certainly capital improvements. And I can't tell you how excited teachers are at Rustburg Middle School when I talk to them. They are still beaming over there at that school. So know that that was good work, and that work is going to be there for a long time. And that the teachers and administrators and the students, everybody in Brookville High School is super excited about what's getting ready to take place over there. And construction has started. We've started knocking down some walls and putting up fencing, and it's going to be a challenge. Unlike the new building, we're going to be doing this renovation project while students are there. And so I think that reality is setting in for administrators a little bit as well. And it's kind of a daunting, task, but we know at the end of the day, it's going to be fantastic and something that we're all going to be proud of. An issue that we've really talked about in the past has been the enrollment at Tomahawk and Leesville Road. We've shared and talked about some of the statistics over there and what we're facing in terms of enrollment. There's a difference between occupational capacity, what a building can hold, and educational capacity. And right now, the number of kids that we have at those two buildings don't look drastically different than they may have 15 years ago. But the programming has changed so much. And what I mean by that is, in the last 10 years, we've had to add 5 special ed classrooms at Tomahawk. We've added a early childhood, basically 3-year-old special classroom at Tomahawk. We've added 2 VPI classrooms, pre-K classrooms to Tomahawk. And these are all mandated programs that we have to provide. So it's not like we're putting 25 students in every classroom. So the programming is what's causing the capacity issues at that building, and something that worries me. Right now we're okay, but at the same time, as we see new developments and new housing projects go in, at some point you just start getting a little squirmy. At what point does this become detrimental to what we're trying to do here in educating our kids? So that's certainly a conversation that I think that we need to keep on the forefront. Tomahawk, I think, is most critical, followed by Leesville Road. We're taking steps as a school division to see what we might be able to do to help alleviate that, but I think it's a bigger conversation that's going to require everybody in the room to weigh in. So those are really my big 3. Schools are in a good place now, but obviously we got to keep our eye on the ball and make sure we're doing what we need to do to prepare for the future. Any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Dr. Stanley, so what you spoke to retention as far as compensation goes. Do you have any plans or any programs in place now to address retention beyond compensation? Compensation is actually a sliver of reason why people stay at a job. Normally it's other things like culture and
With
leadership.
their boss, right?
People I didn't want to say it since you're the boss.
People
But-
quit their boss, right? And I think that's something that we have really echoed. And I think that if you were to ask teachers now, what division is leading when it comes to onboarding and mentoring new teachers, it's Campbell County. We've done an awful lot in the last 2 years. We've hired 2 mentoring coordinators, really one for secondary teachers, one for elementary, and that has been a huge success. And the feedback that we get from teachers that we're hiring from other divisions has been, you all are doing this now better than everybody. the issue is everybody else is going to start catching on to what we're doing, and they will improve in that area as well. But we all know that culture is important. We take that into consideration when we're creating calendars. We take that into consideration in really everything that we do. Teachers drive what we do. So yes, let me address that.
Outstanding. As we know, no matter how well you do, and how hard you try, it's always going to be somebody's going to complain about it. But the people I talk to are very pleased, or the majority of people, what we do here in Campbell County Schools. And we have got some great teachers, and Rushford, now everybody talks about how great Rushford is.
Right.
It's kind of outstanding situation there. It's cool.
Yeah.
And now we got what will be going on too, and that's another big step for us. One of the big things I know some of the teachers I know talk to me and stuff, and is pay. I would like to know what we can do as supervisors if the state doesn't pick up that money, even they do get 1%. These elementary school teachers, they go in there and teaching these children, making them learn in a way they want to learn. Making them learn is one thing, making them learn in a way they want to is great. And example is the yellow branch. I got proof that with one of my granddaughters. Hated it, and now she loves. She can wait to get here every day. What can we do as supervisors to help you learn? I'm the one going to step anywhere I need to help get that going in there for the school.
Well, I think part of that comes from, we need to see what the final budget is from the state. We'll wait as long as we can and get the best estimation that we can. Look at what we can do locally within our budget, and then try to make a decision on, can we gain ground on some of these other localities? Maybe. If nothing else, we need to make sure that we're keeping pace.
We need to keep pace, maybe stay a couple extra steps ahead, I think. We want to keep education up there. I know it's going to, people going to shoot me right now for it. These teachers need to be paid, if not, they're going to leave. I think. I'm willing to work around it to make it happen. Help me make it happen.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. Go ahead.
And it's a related question. I thought you brought up some great points, Kenny. And maybe Dr. Stanley or Mrs. McClanahan has the answer to this question, but it's just numbers are important. You were talking about pay, so just to put some things out there, because you were asking what can we do as a board to support. And I think that's a great question. And can y'all tell us if it was a 1% pay raise across the board? We can do the math and multiply and everything like that. How much more money to a school system budget or to Campbell County school system budget approximately is that when we talk about a 1% raise across the board? Do you have a ballpark of that?
It's about $700,000.
About 700,000. And so for everybody else on the school board, and Mr. Rogers, perhaps I can put you on the spot to answer this question. When it comes to, the revenue side and everything like that, those pennies and everything, can you speak to how much those pennies are in generating revenue, on a tax rate, whether it goes up or down?
Yeah, I think the best way to say that is a penny on real estate now is going to get you right on 600,000. Would be the rough number for the month.
And of course, that's not our only, the way revenue sources are coming in, as we just saw and everything like that. But just so, I thought that's good information for us to share and talk about with one another and related to what Kenny was asking. That way people could start to, and anybody watching can have a good understanding of, what does that take if we make that commitment? Where do the funds come from? Because we've got a little bit of wiggle room, potentially. We've got to look at our different budget priorities and everything like that. But I think schools is an important investment in every community, and especially in ours.
I agree wholeheartedly. Frank does a great job presenting the budget to us. And then it's our place now to go and find the pennies without raising taxes. And it's a fact, man. We got to dig. And I think we need to really dig our time. I think we can, can't we, Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, I respectfully disagree. Of course, we'll all look to cut expenses anywhere we can, but I think it's also, I think Mr. Hardy's point is well made. You know, when we talk about additional support for the schools, you have to look at your revenue engine. And so I'll remind everybody again, the presentation we just went through said local revenues are up $3 million. If 1 penny at the school, or 1% is 700,000, and I heard Dr. Stanley say they'd like to do 3. That's $2.1 million. If that all came out of your local support, that leaves you $900,000 to fund everything else. Let me tell you, a penny for the county staff is $250,000. Want to do 3% for our folks, right? Everyone's $750. Your revenue just went out the window. It's down to 0, and that's before we would address public safety needs, sheriff's department needs, regular increased costs. The county experiences inflation just like everybody else, right? So this is the struggle, and this is why we have these conversations, because it's good to have these discussions early about what we can do. So I understand your point, Ms. Brown. We are very, very constrained in our budgeting. We have very disciplined staff. You're going to get lean budget requests, but there's only so much left to parse out before you're up against the hard realities of your revenue coming in. And that's where hard choices have to be made. And that's where staff gets to present the board options, and you all get to make the hard choices. So we look forward to that conversation going forward.
And you're right, because if we give one person pay increase, fire and safety, sheriff's department, teachers, everybody's wanting a piece of the pie. So we just got to decide how we can look at that pie and take smaller bites from each group, maybe help people. And I agree with you, and you do a great job of what you present to us. And I enjoyed it with the budget. It's kind of intriguing to me to find the numbers and try to look for them. And I've learned so much from my other fellow board members in the past 4 years. I think this year's going to be a great year for us.
Yeah, I think the county's got a bright future. I think we got a lot of good things going on, but you're going to have a very difficult balance to strike as we get into the budget. And we haven't looked at county expenditure requests yet. Those have come in, and they're all being compiled. And so the other half, you know, a budget is a relationship, right? And let me do my little thing now. And what happens when one side of a relationship takes on more than the other? You've got dysfunction, right? So we have a relationship in our budget between revenues and expenditures, and we're trying to do that in a functional way. And if we look too heavy at cutting expenditures, we'll be dysfunctional. And if you look too heavy-handed at bringing in revenue, you're going to be dysfunctional. That's why they call it a balance. And so over the next couple months, the difficulty is striking the balance. The schools have needs, public safety has needs. We want to continue to see economic development growth so that our real estate values go up, the sales tax continue to come in, we continue to see a vibrant community. And so that is a struggle, but it is a worthwhile effort every single year to dig into. And I think this year is going to be just as challenging and exciting as every other budget that we've put together. I really do. You guys know it's sort of I really enjoy doing it.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. We all have some birthing pains right now a little bit by all the construction going on, people moving to the county. And I can see by people moving to the county, we need to find out, IDA needs to find more business to bring in for us. And at that point too, got more homes, more people, more kids spending money. Maybe we can start working it in. Maybe it's not this year, maybe it's next year's budget. We need to start planning ahead, not for this year, the next year, the year after that, to where we can make this county excel better than where else I teach, excel better our sheriff's department and everybody. But it's going to be hard to do. I know it's going to be hard to do. Maybe I'm dreaming.
I think we got a good idea. You know, every year should be better than the one before. I think everybody ought to strive for that. Just how do we do that collectively and collaboratively?
You know, exactly. High school, I was driving a school bus at 16 years old.
You still do that?
Hey, we're hiring. We're hiring school bus drivers.
I go to school every day.
I tell you, I would think that school bus, the bus driver shortage has been one of our biggest issues over the last few years. And I don't know how much money fixes that. I really don't know that. I know that we've tried and we've made some gains, but we just don't have, we've got enough drivers to meet our need until a bus driver gets sick. Or a bus driver has to miss a couple days. Then the next thing you know, we're having to call parents and say we have to cancel a route. And who wants to wake up to that call anymore? And I understand, that's a hardship, but it's what we
They
do.
can't have to do it right now. So, they can't have to do it right now. But I still drive, but there's plenty of them.
every 18 to have a CDL. That's the problem.
Yeah, you're right. I was like 16, you want your 16-year-old kid, you get your license in July, driving the school bus to September. They get caught graduating school bus for them. But it happened. I don't know who had done it, but it happened.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
That's Justin.
Dr. Stanley, you mentioned in your brief of the school system the behavioral issues, and I think we're all very aware of the degradation we're seeing in a lot of families and homes and the upbringing of these children. So in working on the culture within the schools, what are we doing to allow for the teachers to better handle those difficulties? And I mean, what are we changing there? How are the teachers given tools to improve what they can, but then also where do we draw the line between what we expect a teacher to deal with and what we don't expect them to deal with? We have other ways to deal with there to take care of that.
Sure. Well, we're always working with teachers on classroom management. I mean, that's, one of the most important skills that they can have. And unfortunately, we don't see a lot of new teachers coming to us with that skill. We actually have to teach it. 2 years ago, we applied for and received a mental health grant, and we're thankful that we received that. That's allowed us to put mental health workers in each of our schools. It kind of creates a layer of having an adult work with a child before they get in trouble, or if they're acting out for reasons beyond, just being malicious. We've got some supports there, and then we also work with our teachers. They can help us as well on how to manage those kids. I mean, it's a tough act. You can't, when you've got a kindergartner who is destroying the classroom. You can't suspend a suspending a 5-year-old, but at the same time, you got to maintain a classroom environment that's conducive to learning. So that creates a challenge for all of our administrators, especially our elementary people. But we are constantly working on that. We always have sessions on classroom management, dealing with classroom behaviors. Our aides are not only our teachers, but our classroom aides go through that as well. So it doesn't make it any easier, I can assure you.
Oh, no, I believe that. I guess one of the thoughts I had is if there were specific tools, specific programs, additional development of the educators that, we were specifically looking for funds to do very specific things with. I always like to hear those kind of things where it's like, we're not just asking for more money just to maintain what we've got, but we're asking for additional funds because we want to do these specific developments.
Correct. If I thought that we needed more funds to address that specific issue, I would provide that. We've had a behavioral coach that we hired with COVID money, and that person was a retired administrator, a former administrator. She's done some great work. I think her working along with Harvest, who we have our grant with, has been very productive. My fear is in 4 more years, when that grant goes away, am I going to be able to continue to have these people in the building, these people who are providing support? And again, we got the grant. There weren't too many school divisions that I know of that got the grant. So we are being asked how we're doing it by other divisions. And it really boils down to the relationship that we have with the Harvest personnel, how we could sit in a room and say, you know what, we applied for this grant. We can address these issues and support our teachers and administrators, and lo and behold, we got it. So when that time comes where that money goes away, that's going to be a different conversation.
Dr. Stanley, do we have someone with yourself or the school board or within the school system that actually goes there and searches for these grants? Maybe there?
We do.
Good.
We do. And we've done a pretty good job of reeling in some nice grants the last few years, and we're always looking across the board. I don't feel that's important. We don't want to say no to free money.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment? All this conversation, Mr. Carlisle, is important because we are doing a good job, best we can. But we've been in good shape for a while because we did get a lot of money during COVID. And then we did get this grant. but all of these things are one-time monies, right? And we've become, I don't want to say we've become dependent, but we've been able to do a lot because of that. And we're in a position because of that. You know, we are respected by the other. I guess that's what my time's up. But we want to maintain this. And so there is going to, and we have always run a very fiscally responsible school system. And I don't think any of the supervisors here can say otherwise. At some point, there's a likelihood we're going to have to come to you for more money, right? We've been very lucky, I'd say, for the last 5 years, because before that, members of our board know there were times when we weren't getting the money. And so I just want to put that out there, because at some point we are going to be coming to you with more money, so that we can keep doing things that we're doing now, or add programs that need to be added to maintain an educational level that our county needs, our kids need, and our teachers need. So I just want to put that out on the horizon. We got 3 years, two more years on this grant, right? And but this has been a lot of one-time money that has become part of our budget, and we're going to want to continue that. And so I'm just putting that out there for you for future reference. So, but we are doing a good job. Kids that are, you know, the kids can be taught to behave. You got to get some support from their parents. We got to get them into school. That's our biggest issue. The kids we have the most problem with are the kids who are absent from school most of the time, or too high. So our truancy issue is, and we're working hard on it, but you know, parents have to get the kids to the school. We can't go and knock on their door. Well, we do go and knock on their door, but we can't do it every day. We can't drive and pick them up. So it's a very multifactorial issue that we're dealing with. But any program that we can do to help these kids get into school, learn how to behave, and then we already have the opportunities to teach them. Just have to teach them how to learn to learn. And so we want to keep that up in the future. And so we've had a good supportive relationship. This is the one time a year we get to meet together. Which, we didn't used to do that, so I'm very thankful that we have that opportunity and that we're all on the same team. And the one other thing I wanted to say about budget, you know, we're talking schools. I just want to still put in a word for the Sheriff's Department. We have a very collaborative agreement with our SROs. We pay for some of them, you pay for some of them. We need to keep that up. And so I just want to throw in my 2 cents about the Sheriff's Department. Keep them funded so we can keep our SROs in our schools, in every single school. Now you can blow the whistle.
Well, Scott, I agree with you, and that's what I've said pretty much is to get us all to think together on what we need to be doing. Because it's coming. We know it's to come, like you said. It may not be this year or next year, but sometime it's going to be here. And if we start thinking now, start planning now, and like I said, Mr. Rogers gives us a great budget. We as supervisors do work very diligently to do the best we can. We have to look at everything. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. But I do agree with you wholeheartedly. We need to start thinking now, plan for the future.
Mr. Chairman.
Permission to
No, go ahead.
address the boards on a couple of topics. Didn't know if anybody was able to give an update on our internet availability throughout the county. We've got these laptops in the hands of all of our students, and of course the internet access throughout the county is critical to making the most use of that. So I don't know if anybody here tonight was able to give an update on
That's where
what the efforts are as far as expanding internet capability throughout the county, particularly in the Brookneal area. So
Sure, thank you, great question. The county used a lot of its COVID relief ARPA monies to enter into 3 contracts. One's with an outfit called River Street, one's with Chantel, and one's with a smaller outfit called Firefly. So we have 3 contract projects to expand broadband countywide, as you know, sort of the phrase. And so we have until December 2024 to get those projects completed. They've been on a lot of the preliminary engineering and design work. And so they are starting to roll out. The River Street project that'll come up through the Brook Neal area in particular is building to us from some of the surrounding counties. So they are on their way to Campbell, but we are waiting for them to get into Campbell to start running fiber and doing some connections. It's just sort of this work coming out of Charlotte and Pennsylvania and across Bedford. Chantel is sort of the middle swath of the county, if you will. They have a great deal of their design work done. They are doing an overhead project, and so they are tied up on what they call make ready with power companies to get permission to be on the poles, because it was a wonderful thing for the state and federal governments to push all this money into broadband, but the system that exists to review plans and allow use of poles didn't get any additional resources. So you got everybody pushing pole review permit requests into AEP, Dominion, Southside Electric. So there's a real backlog there. We're hoping to see that open up. We have a handful of folks connected through Chantel in the Troublesome Creek area of the county. That was their first pilot project. So about 60 addresses served right now, as I recall. The quickest and most successful project has been with Firefly. That's a subsidiary of Southside Electric Cooperative. They've come sort of in the Appomattox Concord area and done a nice job of extending their service in that area. So all 3 projects are underway. Never as fast as we'd like it to be, but we remain optimistic that at build-out we'll have much better service. There is a huge section of the middle of the county served by CenturyLink, now Brightspeed. We did get initially a state grant to service that area. Brightspeed objected to it, they contested it, and so the state allowed them some additional time to prove that they could serve that area of the county. And so they have another about another year, you know, that, well, not that, because we'll be at the end of our project. They have to show substantial progress in getting the broadband they said they would get into the community, because they got federal money to do it. If they don't, we have a grant awaiting us sort of on the shelf at the state to go back to Firefly and say, expand your footprint and come through and do this. So there's just some dominoes in the process that have to fall for us to get there, but we're meeting monthly about it. I'll be on another meeting in the morning and trying to push it through. So that's the update where we are. We're working it, but it's not where any of us would like it to be.
And just to comment along those lines, I think, you know, it's very important to the board that we wanted to expand that, so we've all been on board, and the administration's done a great job of working on that. And like Frank said, never as fast as you want to be, but if anybody asks you about it and they want to check, we have a tool on the county website where they can, the staff has put together where they can put in their address to see, you know, which plan they would fall under and which group they may hit if they're being touched by this expansion.
That's right. There's been a subsequent award to River Street for a little bit expansion of their footprint, and then there's a new program called BEAD coming out. That's some additional funding, so we'll wait to see what the guidelines are for that. It's an interesting exercise when you got grants to get countywide internet, and then the providers come back and say, we need another grant to expand internet. I thought we got a grant to have countywide internet. So we're working through what that really means, where there is an actual need for additional coverage and the like. So again, long answer, we're working on it. I know everybody's very anxious to get it, but the board has been absolutely dedicated to it since making it a priority several years ago.
Yeah, I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for your efforts, and that's a big effort, and you guys are making great progress, so thank you for that. And while I'm being gracious, one more point. So Dr. Stanley mentioned last night, Campbell County Schools is making a partnership with Elite Recycling, I believe, to start recycling in the school systems, and want to commend the Board of Supervisors for your efforts on recycling in Campbell County. And I'm personally taking part of that, and I go to the landfill, and I tell you, those bins are filled up with cardboard and plastic. Every time I go, you got to kind of work to cram your cardboard in the top of of the bins. So you just think of all that plastic going and getting buried in a hole in a landfill somewhere as opposed to being repurposed and reused. So that's a great effort that I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for, not so much directly related to the school system, but FYI that we're kind of getting an initiative kicked off in Campbell County Schools with that as well. So thank you for that. So that's all I have.
Okay, you have something?
Yeah, shifting all the way back. And this is only because I'm an expert because I heard a radio spot on it. And there's another locality, I don't even know if it was in the state, was talking about their cell phone use policy and how I probably will get all the facts wrong, but they changed their cell phone use policy to kind of go back to when cell phones first came out, when they were basically prohibited in the school systems, and they talked about how that helped not only the behaviors, but it helped with retention of learning and things of that nature. What is Campbell's cell phone use policies in the schools, and is there a plan, if it wasn't recently addressed, is there a plan to reassess it?
You're gonna have to help me, Amy, but right now, I believe cell phones are not allowed to be on or in sight K through 8th grade. High school students can have their phones on during lunch, check their messages, things like that. If they have their phones out, if they're using their phones at a time that's not allowed, then obviously it's an infraction and a consequence. So we're not giving them a lot of access. I mean, before school, secondary kids can have them out during lunch, after school. Middle, elementary shouldn't have them.
Not at all.
That's right. And right now, we haven't heard anything from our administrators that being an issue. So right now, we don't have any plans to reassess.
Yeah, I didn't assume an issue. I was just curious.
That policy just changed 2 years ago, and so we were very late to that change, and so we continue to monitor that to see, do we need to make some adjustments? But especially once we went one-to-one, students have access, so they have laptops with that, but it is something that they really try to be mindful, especially during lunch. Lunch is typically a busy time for administrators for lots of reasons, but so far it's been positive. I do know, I have heard of other school divisions that have shifted due to concerns of safety, and it's just a major distraction. But we really do not foresee us changing to let, especially middle school. We don't see a need for that at all. This is really for high school.
Correct.
Great question.
Thank you for that clarity.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question. How does Campbell compare to the surrounding counties from an ROTC standpoint? And is there interest of ROTC in the county?
There is, and we've been talking about that more this year. We've actually talked about it in years past. From what I understand, we've got some of the challenges now really with the ROTC program in general is staffing. So we have to have a certain percentage of kids committed to it, whether per school or if we did something regionally, it'd have to be up to 100. So challenges for us are, one, staffing. Okay, there's always a priority list with who we need to add, because with each add is obviously a price tag. So I think that would be a fantastic program. I think our board's in favor of that. It's just a matter of where would it go, how are we going to staff it, and then I think once you get your name on there's a wait list right now with the different branches of the armed services. So then how long does it take to be on that wait list? I've actually asked one of our directors at central office to reach out to somebody who can better inform us and set up a meeting with them to kind of see where we can go from there. But I think we'd love it, and I think it'd be a great fit in Campbell County. It's just a matter of kind of jumping those hurdles there.
Mr. Chairman, if I could answer that question too. So Tom, when I first got in, I wanted ROTC in high school when I was in high school, right? Well, I won't tell you when that was, but so when I jumped on board, I actually met with Mr. Hardy and asked him about it because I didn't know if it was a tech center thing. So I've actually spoken to the Air Force guys who do the city ROTC. I have tried to reach out to LU's campuses repetitively and talk to them too. Of course, talk to our recruiters because I have one in boot camp right now and another one on an aircraft carrier, and some folks on the Bedford County School Board. And to be totally honest, not only are there the criteria we have to meet, but they have no staff. So the military, that was, it was almost all I could do to pry a contact name and number from the gentlemen when I saw them at events or when I saw them in meetings, because they do also have some personnel issues on the military side. But we would love to have it.
And two, it's a matter of where it's spaced. Do we have the space to actually house it?
Any more questions?
Frank, you talking about the internet with Firefly?
Yes, sir.
Is that just south sides? Are they just doing it in their areas where they already have the poles? Or are they in areas of Dominion?
They're willing to expand outside of their coverage area, and that's some of what, it's called the body program. That's some of what that grant would encourage and has enabled.
So their program hasn't been that good or better than any, just because they had access to the poles?
They have been able to get out quicker because of that, yes, sir, but they are willing to go beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
We good? Do we have any other business? Let's see. If not, I'd ask for someone for the board of supervisors for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn the school board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We done.
Thank y'all.
Thanks.